What do you do if even that suggested bid is not giving any impressions? That's not abnormal, unfortunately. It's not abnormal to not get impressions. And so what I would say is that raise your bids, test raising bids. A couple of reasons why this could happen as well is you might have that particular search being triggered through another one and somewhere else in your ad structure for that product. So that could be another reason why. So if, for example, if that keyword is performing in, say, a phrase match and you go and you launch an exact match, it might take a while for that impressions to start shifting over to the exact match, which is fine and expected. Okay, so you can test that. I would honestly just test like increasing the bids here. Oftentimes, even if you're using the suggested bid, that doesn't necessarily mean that's a high enough or aggressive bid. The suggested bids are a good start, but you always need to optimize from there. There are other ways to do it, right? So anything that is going to increase your conversion rates will increase your ranking. Anything that increases the amount of orders that you're getting through that specific search will increase your ranking. That's why a lot of times sellers will do these things in tandem, like, say, testing coupons, potentially testing lower price point if you have the margins enough to be able to do that. If there's any sort of listing optimization that you've been putting off for a while. I also just today filmed, so expect it out within the next week or so, filmed a video on how to analyze your conversion rates versus your competition. There's some stuff going over the search query performance reports, how to use those to analyze. So if you're brand registered, I would keep a lookout on the YouTube channel. That's going to be helpful as far as like analyzing how is your conversion rate versus your competition. Best combination of map types for branded, generic, and competitor keyword targets. Yeah, I'm still a huge fan of using all the above. So we use exact match, phrase match, and broad match for pretty much all targets across the board. And now it does somewhat vary depending on the account budget and then what stage we're in, because you noticed when I was talking about product launches, I recommended launching specifically an exact match and sticking to that for a while. So I do think that that is applicable. What I would say is that the more aggressive you want to target something, the more specific your match type should be. And that's not because there's anything wrong with phrase match or anything wrong with broad match. Everything has their place. The difference between those is when I am aggressive in exact match, I can be 100% confident that my spend is being allocated to that specific search term. If that decrease in ad impressions means less people are seeing your product through the ads, and then the sort of cumulative, the way that the ads influence organic ranking is if the ads sales are happening through that one specific search. That's why I talk about if you're going aggressive, go an exact match so you can influence the sales velocity through that one specific search. If both the organic and the advertising combined make a greater sales velocity on that one shopper search, then you will climb up the rankings. And that is exactly and precisely the reason why a lot of people will push their advertising, they'll see their organic ranking climb, and then they'll say, oh, this is unprofitable, and they'll cut their ads, and then their ranking decreases. And they're like, what gives? It's because those ad sales through that shopper search were adding to the cumulative or total sales that you were getting through that one shopper search. And without those additional ad sales, you do not have enough sales velocity to be able to push past your competitors. Business reports will tell you the sales that happen the day that that transaction is enacted. So if I go into, if I go to Amazon as a shopper right now, I want to purchase a product, bang, done, add to cart, ship it to me. That transaction is going to show up in that seller's business report as the day that I bought the product. However, if they go into their accounting section of their reports and they look at when they actually, when that accounting records the sale, they're probably not actually going to see that transaction till maybe a day later. And the reason why is because you don't actually get paid as a seller until that product ships. Hello, and welcome back to another Thursday live where you can join and ask your Amazon ad question. So if this is your first time joining, we welcome you. And if you are one of our many return viewers, we appreciate it. Also, if you're watching the replay, awesome. We hope you get a lot of value today. So if this is your first time seeing me on the internet, or your first time interactions, hey, my name is Elizabeth Greene. Why we talk about Amazon ads here is because I'm one of the co-founders of an Amazon ad agency called Junglr. So I've been doing this for a hot minute now, seen a ton of different scenarios, tackled a ton of different Amazon advertising strategies, also continuously learning. So I was testing some other lives today, and someone was saying like, hey, I'm getting some really good experience with the optimized for ROAS bidding strategy. I was like, oh, that's super interesting because we tested that a while ago and like didn't actually see good performance to that. Or used to be a big like negative proponent of dynamic up and down bidding, and yet we're running some more tests and actually seeing in certain scenarios dynamic up and down bidding is actually kind of working now. So a lot of testing, a lot of different things, which is why I am super excited. So this is a very special episode of Ask Junglr. So if you are not watching this live, I'm sorry, you're really missing out. And the reason why is because there is going to be way more experts on today's live than we've had in a while. So if you've been watching for a minute, you know that I will occasionally bring on some other good PPC brains because I have a huge network of a lot of very smart people who I feel like are a lot smarter than me in a lot of respects. And so not only am I looking at what we're doing with our own brands, but I'm constantly tapping into our network, being like, hey, what are you guys seeing? Cross-checking things. We're seeing this work. Is that something you guys are seeing as well? And so those different perspectives are insanely helpful, especially if you are a seller and you're managing it yourself, right? You're constantly trying to find new strategies. And where do you go to get your information? Where do you go to see if things are working or not working? Or even if you're an agency, like you only have access to your accounts and what you've seen, but there's so many different perspectives out there. And I think the hardest scenario is when you tried something that you know, quote, should work, and like it's just not working. And you're like, I've kind of tapped the barrel on my own strategies. I've never seen this before. I've never run across this. Help. Where do you go for help? So if you are not aware, there is an amazing group that I'm definitely a part of, and there's some amazing founders and co-founders of that. So they are going to be joining me today. So I'm super stoked to bring on Brent, Gonza, and Michael to the Ask Junglr podcast. We're super excited to have you guys on, and welcome.
Thank you for having us.
What's up, Elizabeth?
Awesome. No, I'm stoked for this one because again, more PPC brains than mine. When I only have one, I don't know, co-host, guest, whatever you want to call it. There's always like a good perspective, and now we have 3 additional perspectives. So those are the best. Awesome. Do you want to quickly, let me pull up the core website because you guys are doing, or actually which one do you want us to take it? Do you want to plug core a little bit? Because I know you all have your respective agencies. Maybe we'll do intros, or what do we want to do? Intros, or you want to do core first?
I can start with intros. Why not? I mean, the common thing that binds us all together is core, of course, right? That's our common unifying factor, and we have different kind of facets that we focus on inside of core. But yeah, I'll start. I'm Brent. I've been in Amazon advertising for about 10 years. Run an agency. More importantly, for this call, ready to answer any questions, and specifically if people have questions about DSP and AMC, I'm kind of more tuned into that these days and happy to answer that. And yeah, co-founded Core with the 3 people you see here on the screen as well. And we've been running that for, I don't know, like almost 2 years now, actually. We have a pretty active community of about 60 some people. And that continues to grow when we do these launches like this.
Awesome. Michael, Gonza, you want to take it away?
Yeah, sure. I'm Gonza. I'm the founder of SireSquare. I'm the seller of the bunch. We own and operate 3 brands on Amazon and off Amazon. And one of the reasons, or my particular reason to join these 2 gentlemen and Ulyss in founding Core, was the fact that it was very hard for me when I started scaling my team to have to understand everything that was going on with Amazon advertising, everything that was new. It took me actually a long time to even find out like new features, new tools, new report types. So it had become so difficult to stay updated. And then to transfer that knowledge to my team on a monthly or even weekly basis sometimes was impossible. So I felt this need to have a place where different minds, came together every week and just, debate, brainstorm, share knowledge, share processes. It was fundamental to sustain growth.
Mm-hmm. Cool, Michael.
Yeah, and I think for me, something like 13 or so years ago, I was lucky enough to have a e-commerce client that was selling on Amazon. So I feel like I had, compared to sort of, maybe some others, I feel really lucky that I got like really early exposure to Amazon advertising. And me personally, I love number one, I hate having problems when it comes to Amazon advertising or Amazon growth, or how do I make this account go bigger. So to me, one of the most valuable things that I've used throughout my career was just having a good group of people to be able to consistently go to, that aren't going to try to like sell you something or hype themselves up, or just, there's so much of that on the internet. So I've always used that for my own entrepreneurial growth or digital marketing. It's just hard to find a place to go that you can trust, that you're not going to be like misled, like somebody's trying to sell you something. And it's also really difficult to build a community that like indoors. I've tried here and there to start like Amazon based communities, and it's really tough. So like, that's why tapping into all of y'all has been really great. So to me, like Core is that place. Like we had 1,130 posts and comments in 2024, which I think is like pretty sick. So to be able to go there and ask questions and tap into it, even at our own internal company, where somebody asks a question in our Slack channel, I'm like, that's a great question for Core. Because not only would you get like my answer, but you also get like a whole bunch of other people's answers. So I'm super grateful for Elizabeth, Gonza, and Brent for starting Core with me. It's been a really cool journey, and it just serves a really nice place where I know every Wednesday I'm going to go there. It's going to be a private mastermind. I'm going to be able to tap into, whatever is new, learn something new. It's where I go to learn a lot of new things as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to bring it up now. So Core does something where they don't have open enrollment all the time. So you got to get in on it. And I would recommend getting in on it fast. You got about 5 days left to apply, which is, one of the reasons why Michael and Gonza and Brent are on here, which we totally should have you guys on maybe in off season, but definitely let you guys know if you want to apply to be a part of Core. And there is an apply, because it's a very high level group. It is a paid group, obviously, because there's a lot of moderation. There's a lot of work that goes into it. So they're looking for people, obviously, who are interested in joining, and, but I know personally from speaking with all of you that it's not about the numbers, which obviously a lot of, the more insights, the better, but it's about the quality of content. So they're very, very specific on who joins. Are they going to be a contributor to the community? Is it going to be a benefit as it grows? That's something like quality is super important, which I always really appreciate. And I think the thing that is so special about Core is, for those of us who have been in this space a while and have our networks, like, if I ever had a problem before, I would reach out like, okay, so I was directly contacted with Michael. I was in contact with Brent, Gonza. I've met through, Core in this process. But I have those people. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know. I feel like we're at the end of the rope as a team, even though, again, we have a lot of resources as an agency. There's always going to be those outliers. So I could message you all individually, but even with that, it's not like collective minds coming together to solve a problem. It's individual conversations here and there. So the benefit of Core is it just kind of brings that community that a lot of us have cultivated, but in like bits and pieces and in silos, and makes it available, especially if you are a brand manager, or if you are, trying to, I'm seeing some questions in the chat like, hey, I'm looking to change career. I want to really understand Amazon advertising, looking to up-level my skills. Or if you are a seller who are trying to figure out, or even if you're an agency owner and you're like, look, I'm kind of driving this team. I'm at the head of this. If I don't learn it and disseminate it to the team, like, yes, they're kind of learning in their own silos, but I want to keep myself up to date. But my time, like, I just don't have time to learn all the things. And I need a place where I can go and know that the quality is good, the content's going to be on point, and the people are very generous. Because like you said, Michael, a lot of times there are communities that are built, but all of them seem to be like, one, they're not moderated. They're not focused. It's a numbers game. So they're like, hey, let's just get everybody in we possibly can, because it's like a sales funnel. So we all know that. We've tried to be in the Facebook groups. We've tried to be in what you post a question on Amazon ads and you get 20 DMs of let me, and you're like, dude, I'm an agency owner. Like, I was just trying to figure out something. I don't. Right. And also the ability of, to be even like agency owners and stuff, if you're trying to figure out, this is a tricky scenario. Not only do I have the advertising scenario, but I also have the client communication aspect. There's a lot more moving pieces. It's like there's so much context and depth to the questions and the conversations. And also a lot of, like when we just had a question of somebody wants us to take over target ads. And I'm like, I've told the client, I'm like, hey, we will test it. We will try it. We've never done target ads before, right? And so I was like, core community, doesn't it? And Brent's like, oh yeah, I have this information that I have. Let me pass along the information to you, so like immediately be able
Liz,
to.
that's one of my favorite moves, actually. Someone asks a good question, and I just drop a PDF in from the company that I had. I know I gave you that target one, so I hope you got some use out of that. Very interesting. But yeah, that's something that wouldn't happen on LinkedIn, for example. Like I wouldn't just do that publicly, right? That's something that would happen privately.
Right. So a good community that's a safe space that you can ask questions. One, the information's not going to get like shared. It's not a public group. It's not like it's going to get shared and passed around everywhere. I know you guys have built something super special. So with that, we'll show the community. We'll earn our chops today. So I'm already seeing some questions in the chat. So if you haven't been on this before, and I'm already seeing some DSP stuff. So like that's the benefit. A lot of people like, should I get into DSP? When do I get into DSP? We'll cover all of that today. So feel free to drop any of your questions. We're going to focus on Amazon ad questions. If you have another question, again, Gonza has a seller's perspective. So he's been all over accounts, everything A to Z. So we can probably answer those questions as well. But the format of this is we drop your chat wherever you're focused or whatever you're streaming, and all of us will add input. The way it works is typically questions come in slow and then they come in really fast. So FYI, we're going to be here till the top of the hour. So we got a good solid 45 minutes.
All right, let's go.
Great
Let's
value.
go. I'm ready. Speed round. Hit us.
Yeah, but make sure you drop your questions down. We get a question on Vine reviews. So there's a two-part to this because there was a follow-up. He was asking, hey, what do you think about Amazon Wine is Mine? I did clarify. I personally think it's not a good option, but then asking, how do you boost reviews and what is the perfect strategy? And then I was saying like, oh, do you mean Vine reviews? And he was saying, yeah, any tips on how to land entry? Oops, no, that's not wrong. There was a second one. Okay. He was saying, yes, Vine. I don't know exactly. Like Vine reviewers don't know the product. So there's this thought of, okay, if I get Vine reviewers, sometimes they're a little bit picky. And he was wondering about if they'll be too critical and if Vine is a good idea. My overall idea is like, if your product is good, yes. If your product sucks, then you're going to get bad reviews regardless. I don't know who wants to take the Gonza. You might have the most perspective on this.
Yeah, we use it a lot, and we use it in different ways, depending on the brand and the type of product. If you are launching a product, and I like what you said, but I need to tell you, Liz, most people launching products, they think their products are good, and that's a problem. Then they throw Vine at it, and then they find out early on, people don't like my product. However, there's one psychological aspect of Vine, and I hope Amazon doesn't have wine, but you never know. Amazon's basics, Merlot. One thing that we've tried in the past is ungating the listing once it's already enrolled, and increasing the price by maybe 20-30%. Let's say you're launching something at $19.99, so you put it at I don't know, $29.99, and you do the Vine. Normally they take a couple of weeks to be claimed, right? And if this is not a high, what you expect to be like a high velocity product, then that having it open for just 2 weeks at a higher price point without trying to funnel traffic or anything to the listing does not really damage your hunger score period. So you ungate it, you have them claimed. That price point gives you a lot of, oh, this is a great product for the price type reviews. And they don't normally list the price point in the review, so it's fine. And that's a psychological perspective that then remains in reviews. So, if someone reads it, then it applies no matter what price point the product is at the time of the purchase. So we do that. If it's a product that it's really high velocity, very competitive, those 2 weeks create more harm than good. But again, it's always better to ungate, get the claims, right? Shut it down, wait maybe 2 weeks for the reviews to start coming in, which is normally how long they take. And once you get those 20-30 reviews, then do a proper launch, because from those first 2 weeks when you launch with no reviews, that hurts the psychological part of conversion, right? And then also what you avoid is ungating a listing with your full launch strategy, whatever that is, but especially if you're throwing a lot of advertising money and those first Vine reviews are 2 stars, that's horrible.
Yeah.
That really puts like a bottlenecks the entire effort. So it's always better to open it with no traffic, wait for the reviews. If you get 2-3 bad reviews, then wait for the other ones to come. They normally balance that out to maybe 4.2 star reviews, and then you do a launch. That has worked very well for us.
That is fabulous fun. And then other than that, which something I recently found out from a client that's going to change to the way that Vine reviews are calculated. He was saying, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that it used to be that Vine reviews, like those quote purchases, like they're not purchases, but they're quote, were not included in the sales data. Where recently he said there's been a change where he noticed that his Vine reviews were counted as sales. Which, because all of a sudden we were like, hey, there's a nice sales boost to these, and because we're running ads, we're on top of that. And he was like, yeah, those are actually the Vine reviews that.
Yeah, no, we count them as sales. I mean, if you're using Sellerboard, for example, they come through as sales with then the payout is 0, but the dollar value comes in as revenue. Yes, and the COGS comes in. Before it used to they used to come as 0, with a COGS of X. Now we do see the sale with, I mean, the revenue coming in, but then you have the negative profit at the end of the month, plus all the fees. But on that, if you have a new brand, Amazon is waiving the Vine fees for an X amount of SKUs, which is really good. And every once in a while, they roll out a discount on that fee, which used to be higher, then it went down. I haven't been keeping track of that, but I think it was like $200 per ASIN to enroll it. But we've been waived the last 10 products that we launched, which is, it's $2,000.
Yeah, no, that's definitely nice. And I assume other than that, it's the request a review button and some automations for that to make it easy is pretty much like when it comes to boosting reviews. That's what you guys see.
Yeah. Yeah, we use, I think we use the one from Helium 10 that has a quota. And so we use it until we exhaust the quota, and then we move to another software that has another quota. We don't want to upgrade our subscription to something that's like 3 times the cost just to have more.
I know. I was okay. I'm not gonna go off on that. I was gonna say.
Yeah, but I need to say something about that review button. It's not the most efficient way or effective way to get reviews. I think the number of reviews that you get from that are not that great. So if for some reason that automation failed, you wouldn't really feel any difference or see any difference in the amount of reviews that are coming every week. The one strategy that, and I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, that really works is selling very good products at the highest velocity that you can, because there's always this 2-3% review rate that you get, and if the product is good, you get good reviews. So I honestly, it sounds silly, but I haven't found, even through inserts and TOS violating strategies, nothing gets you reviews that stick, because that's another thing. You can get, very creative, and then Amazon gets very smart, and then at some point you go from 2,000 reviews to 500 overnight. Nothing really creates better reviews and faster rates of new reviews coming in as sales velocity. Amazon has become very good at making this as organic as possible. So I would concentrate on that, and maybe good inserts, TOS compliant inserts. That's the other thing, just to bring it from maybe 3 to 4%.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. So again, if you want access to good information like this on a weekly basis or daily, if you want to post daily, I'm going to plug Core Community again. I have dropped the link in the chat, so you guys should be able to find it. If you guys can't find it because you're watching on LinkedIn, feel free to DM me, or all of these amazing people are on LinkedIn as well. And Core Community is on LinkedIn as well. So you can definitely go there and check. Although there's a really good question, I'm making sure I'm not skipping over. Gilbert was asking, so you said you got a lot of massive team. Yes, these people are amazing. It's always amazing when people come together from like different agencies, different perspectives, and it's super excited about today's live. Is there a situation where category targeting is not a good idea? And how do you make use of category targeting to its max potential? I have some ideas here, but anyone want to take this one?
Mike, I see you thinking.
I am thinking.
Okay.
Yeah. To me, I think there's a first principle here where it's like, you don't want to put the cart before the horse and say all of your campaigns must be structured this way every time. Instead, it's much more about an iterative, make it better every week approach. So with that being said, I think it's, you either approach it in one of two ways. And ultimately, the thing that you're trying to get is like, do I have enough information? Do I have enough data to make a good decision here? So in terms of like using category targeting to its max potential, I mean, there's some basics there that you can set yourself up for success more by being selective about things that you filter out of that category targeting, of course. So you can filter for specific kinds of brands that you can't go against, or brands that you do want to go against with certain prices or certain star ratings that you're going to go head to head with. So like you can set yourself up for success that way. But even if you don't, even if you just have, more money than time and you just launch it unfiltered as much as you possibly can, you still want that optimization step to happen, which is you look at the things that you appeared for, and then you just double down on the things that you appeared for. So that's my general approach to anything, let alone category targeting. But that's just some initial thoughts there, that it should be a feedback loop. So even before you try to land on the perfect amount of the perfect type of category targeting, just know that you know, it's even that is just an assumption. And the real thing that you're trying to get to is like, you did this, what do you do next? That's the most important question to understand. What do I do next after I did anything? Elizabeth?
Yes, I 100% concur. You guys can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Loud and clear.
Okay, sweet. I switched over my mic. The stupid thing was like busted. So, okay. Audio should be much better now. But yeah, so I 100% agree with Mike. I would say we recently have built out and are using more some analysis for category targeting. Analysis meaning like breaking down what is the performance of like the non-specific category targeting with no refinement. What does it look like when we do price point? What does it look like when we do reviews? Those kind of things. So I actually talked with a brand. Funny enough, they were running like I think they're spending a couple $100,000 a month on ads, and they didn't even realize that refinements were available in category targeting. So you might not even be aware of it. I was kind of like, oh, I thought everybody knew about that, but apparently not.
Amazon loved unrefined targeting.
Yes. So I would say if you can do category refinements, one thing we found to be effective, and again, this is like Michael said, blanket rules and then test, iterate from there. There always should be an optimization aspect. 110% agree with that. Is if you have a higher price point, it's typically harder to find like category refinements where people have even like lower, higher prices than you. But what you can sometimes do is say, okay, maybe I can specifically focus on showing up of products in this category where I have a much higher star rating because, I have a higher quality product. And sometimes that, higher price can also signal higher quality in addition to the review. So that could be something to test. We've seen, again, the other thing we found is that the more refinements you put on there, the less potential products you're going to find in your category. So the more specific you get, which means you can also be a little bit more confident of doing more aggressive bids on those type of targeting because you're not going to blast yourself everywhere. So what our general rule of thumb on launch, iterate from here, is the more refinements we have, the more aggressive we'll go with the bids. The initial bids, the no or less refinements we have, the more careful we'll be with our starting bids. And from there, it's, work your way up. If you're not getting impressions, the typical optimizations, high costs, check to see if you need to add negatives, reduce bids. And then, if it is working, inch your way up in terms of the optimization. The other thing I would say is there are certain products where like, you just can't get them profitable in category targeting, and then you put your bid low enough to try and get profitable and you just don't get impressions. And what I would say is that test category targeting, but if you can't get it profitable, that does happen for certain products. And it's not like a targeting type that I would be like, oh my gosh, I can't get category targeting to work. So therefore I'm like significantly missing out on something. We always really try and run these for profitability for the most part.
It is expensive.
Yeah. It can be. Good question. I'm sure Brent's gonna get this one. So good. We're like rotating through everybody. But there's this, which I hear this question a lot. So like if somebody wants to start with DSP for the first time, like what are the initial steps? Should you hire an agency? Also, it would be a good starting budget. And Brent, I might throw in here because I know this is one of like the most common questions I get from brands who aren't currently running DSP is like, at what point should you even start thinking about DSP? Is there like specific flags, amount of spend, performance? Like when would be a good start? And then along this question, like how do you even get started?
It's a fairly long answer. Let me try to encapsulate it well. Actually, I did a presentation in Core a few weeks ago about this very topic. I had a presentation for 11 signs that you should like run DSP, essentially was the premise of it, and went through. So let me start with the question itself, and then I'll get to your addition, Liz, right? So if someone wants to start with DSP, what are the initial steps? Yeah, so the biggest obstacle to DSP that still exists is access to having what's called a seat or an instance, right? So you don't have the ability to just go to like, dsp.amazonadvertising.com and just open one up, right? If you are of a sufficient size, you've probably been approached by Amazon to say, would you like a DSP seat? Or you can ask your account executive if you have an existing relationship with them to open you one. that probably doesn't apply to the person asking this question. So the only recourse you really have is one of two things. You could go work with Amazon directly, or you can work with an agency or reseller or service provider that can do it for you. Just touching on working with Amazon directly, usually they have a very high spend minimum, typically in excess of 15, 20K USD a month. I don't know what the going rate is for the EU right now because we primarily run DSP in the US market. We have done it in the EU market, but it's been a little while. So that's like the first thing to know. If you want to work with a agency or a tool provider, you can do that, and they can get you set up on DSP. They'll be doing it through their instance. So yet again, you won't have direct control over the DSP instance yourself, because the way the permissions model works is you can't just log in. You'd be able to see all the other accounts that they have. It'd be like if Liz just let me go and like log into her client account and I saw all her clients. Like, that's not acceptable, right? For various reasons. So can't do that. That's a big no. But any good DSP, like, you'll know you're working with a good DSP agency if they're willing to give you video screen shares of your account and show you everything inside of there and say, this is the audience we set up. This is the creatives that you reviewed that we're now using. Here's how successful they are. This is where the ads are being shown in the inventory. This is the kind of results we've had in terms of detail page views, add to carts, purchases, if that's the objective of the campaign. Maybe you're running videos and you're just trying to get as many people to watch your entire video as possible. And then that's like a metric you can, show success against. So if they're willing to give you that information, do a screen share and show you everything, they're probably a good DSP agency. If they're just going to send you a report once a month, ignore your questions and not answer the phone, that might not be the best relationship. And you should probably try to figure out who you can work with that's going to be more open about that. Because unlike sponsored ads, what we're talking about so far here, you can't just log into your dashboard and look at your stats. Mm-hmm. You have to rely on who you're working with to give you that information. So to answer the question, should they do it themselves? It's usually not possible to do it. You have to work with an agency or Amazon to do it. And then the second part, good starting budget. I would say if you're willing to spend more than 10K USD a month, you can start to explore mid upper funnel campaigns and I should say orders and line items, which is kind of like the campaigns and ad groups of DSP. If you're going to spend less than 10K USD a month, probably stick to retargeting and like lower funnel stuff. Just do it for a handful of products. Don't try to be like, okay, we have $100,000 a month on Amazon US and then another 50K on Amazon Canada. Therefore, we're going to spend on all the same products that we spend on those two marketplaces. We have 50 SKUs. No, don't do that. Pick like 3 at most, your hero SKUs, the ones that are going to help everything else down catalog, the ones that have substantial audiences already seeing them. What you're going to do is basically use those to rise the tide of your whole catalog. You're going to use those as your lead out. That's going to be the one, the guy on the horse leading the charge, the cavalry charge, is going to be your hero product. And then the other ones will follow behind. And so, Liz, that actually starts to answer your question, which is like, when is it right to do it? It's if you have that hero product. Maybe you have a product that is a consumable. And so this is a good use case for DSP. Usually consumable products or durable products at a higher price point are usually a good fit for DSP. So you would look at some data and say, how often do people repurchase? Okay, let's set up some retargeting campaigns to make sure to remind them when they've exhausted their supply to purchase again. We want to exclude people that have already purchased recently. And so we're targeting the right kind of audience there. And then the second part to DSP is the creative. So you hit them with good creative. Either you custom make it or you use Amazon's what's called REC, responsive e-commerce creative, to craft like headlines and imagery and stuff that kind of resonates with people. So that's part of how you know it's right to advertise on DSP. I could go into more depth, but I don't want to hog the airspace here.
No, I think that gives listeners, I know that is a common question. I'm sure the team's going to like clip that and we'll send that out. But again, just FYI, I know I keep plugging, but I'm a huge believer in what Core is doing. That presentation that Brent was saying, like all of the past presentations and all of the past calls and stuff are already logged in the community. So if you're hearing something and someone and is like, hey, Brent's like, hey, I did a whole presentation on DSP and how to get into it. And like, the 11 points, that's available. If you are eligible to join, then you are keeping it very high level. But
Brent did an awesome presentation a few weeks ago in a way I'd never heard, which was what products are right for DSP, like
Mhm.
price point and like place in the market, like all these interesting things that I feel like don't often get considered too. So
Yeah.
I thought that was really awesome. I just got to give kudos to Brent.
Yeah,
Thanks.
definitely. Which, by the way, if anyone's listening this and you're liking it, it's helpful. Thumbs ups and hearts and whatevers. I know. Yeah, engagement is helpful. It'll definitely push us out. Give them some love. But next question. This is a new one. So the business placements. Some question is like, hey, do we know how this works? I mean, it works like regular placement percentage increases. I guess I haven't thought about where they actually appear. Do any of you guys have any insights on that?
Yeah.
My sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh no, yeah, people using Amazon Business, right?
Yeah.
So like, I don't know if anyone, there's like a separate Amazon. You register as a business, you pay extra each month, and you basically access a different Amazon. I mean, it has all the normal products there, but there's some perks. There's some reasons to do it, but I think it's like $99 a month is what companies pay for just to get
Mhm.
access to Amazon Business. So it's like, do you want a bid modifier for those people?
Yeah.
We have one. I have one experience where it's working quite well, where like it converts better because this particular product does well in a business environment. So they're willing to pay more for those commercial customers as opposed to individual people living in a house or apartment. They're actually trying to go after offices and businesses because like
Yeah.
businesses might buy 30, 40 of this particular product.
Mhm.
So it's
Regularly,
worked really
too,
well
yeah.
there. And then another client with a different product, which doesn't really apply to businesses, turned it on and it did nothing for them. So if your product is good for businesses, yeah, it's been really nice and really easy to get going and recommend it if you have a product that makes sense for businesses to buy.
Nice. Yeah, I know if you go into like they had those whole ASIN recommendations now to like, if you don't have A+ content or something, the system will flag it. And one of them is if you don't have, what is it, the Amazon business pricing or something, they
Yeah.
recommend and they say like, oh, there's going to be an X amount of sales lift if you do this. Some of the products I'm like, yeah, this doesn't apply. Like it's like a feminine skincare product. And I'm like, I don't know if this is maybe they're purchasing skincare at volumes for their team. I don't know.
It's not only that, it's the fact that you purchase for yourself from that account as well. So yeah, it makes sense if you're selling, let's say you're a seller that sells printer paper. Yeah, it makes total sense that because you're offering business pricing, right? Which is different. It's like 10, 20% sometimes lower. So if you're targeting those buyers as a seller, I would definitely use business placements because it ties up with your discount. So, in terms of conversion rate, you're going to win that conversion versus another business not running business pricing and not getting the impressions, right? So it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But even if you're selling something like a one-off or any like skincare, that person is using, because of the business pricing, it's using that woman might be using her business account to buy, for her kids and herself, just to get that business pricing. That again, it's never lower than a 10% off. So it makes sense to go after those. Essentially, you're going after those consumers with a higher bid.
Interesting.
And one other thing I'll add to this too is, for years in business reports, we've had those annoying B2B columns that are always enabled. And now, they're actually useful, turns out. Go in, enable them, and then sort by those. And you can see, oh, look, this product has a crap ton of B2B purchases. That's great. Okay, maybe this is the one that we should examine for. Here's a campaign. Let's change the bid modifier for business. And what do you know? We're getting more sales for business. So finally, after all these years, that has a utility. And you might, look at the data and be somewhat surprised. You have products that you wouldn't assume would be bought by B2B people. I mean, obviously, there's some that are probably not going to ever be purchased, but as always, I think Liz would say, look at the data.
So, right. Like somebody's boss is going to see what they're buying.
Yeah. No, actually, I wouldn't have even thought about the B2B columns. That is an insanely good call out, Brent, which is why I always like to have more heads on this one. And again, plug-in core, but more heads in core. So we all have we all have weekly calls exactly like this, going over specific scenarios and more insights, which is awesome. Got a couple budgeting questions, which is always the hardest one. Ad spend. I always say like Amazon ads is about ad spend control, how to do that effectively. So this question is, how do you manage budgets for products with a high cost per click? I know I have pretty strong opinions on this, but I would
define
like-
high,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
that is true.
yeah, true.
It's all
High
relative.
is relative. Are you in supplements? Do you have $15 to $8 cost per click, or are you worried about like $1 cost per click, which honestly today is about average? I'm assuming high as in a cost is high because of high cost per click.
Or,
So
or
again,
like high relative to price of
Yeah.
product.
I would assume
Right.
in that
like a couple
scenario.
dollars for $15 item. It's like that would be high, right? But that wouldn't be for something that's 120.
But I like that definition, is making your ACOS high, no matter what it is. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I can go over the.
I have an answer for that.
Go for it.
It's maybe not what he expects. Is it? Yeah. I don't like budgeting. I think the budget should be as much as possible. So what I would control is CPCs, or your bids and the resulting CPC, because managing budget sounds to me that that campaign is running out of budget at some point during the day. So you cap it. What you want to do when you manage a budget, by definition, is that you cap that spend. And then if that happens at 2 p.m., Eastern, you're not going to have your ads showing for, hours and hours and hours. So what I would do is, since lowering those bids will lower the amount of impressions that you get throughout the day, and your impression share throughout the day, that's what I would do. That's how I would manage what you maybe are referring to as, budget. It's the spend. And the total cost of the campaign relative to sales, right? And your ROAS and your ACOS. So that's how I would do it. The budgets that we have set up for every campaign are several times what it spends every day. And we like it like that way, in case we buffer, in case, there's someone runs out of inventory, a competitor, and then we start getting more at a decent ACOS. We don't want to run out of budget. So our budgets are always intentionally high. And what we do is we cap our spend with the amount of impressions that we want to get by reducing the bid.
I like it. I have it opposite, but that's why I like.
Go do it.
I don't think it. I like that because I think it's dependent, right? So what I'm gonna say may or may not work, and you might want to follow Gonza's. We view budgets as like in the beginning. I will say this, like in the testing phase, I would view a budget as sort of like a fail safe that allows you to be aggressive with your bid tests without being worried that it's going to blow up in your face and affect total ACOS too much. So I 100% agree with Gonza. Like, if you have an account where you're controlling things with bids, ACOS is fantastic. It is a keyword that is really driving your trajectory 100%. Like, why would you ever cap that in terms of your spend? But what we do oftentimes, even on a launch, because we have a pretty aggressive and like short window for our launch strategy, we will set, when I say quote lower, I mean it is enough so it's relative to the bid. Like, say the average cost per clicks or average suggested bids in my space is like $1, and we expect to have, I don't know, like a 10% conversion rate, 10 clicks on average. $10 is going to give us one order, maybe a little bit higher than that, so like a $15 or $20 budget just to cap. And then if we need to go up, so what that allows us to do is, like, if we have to jump to, we're not getting impressions, like a $2 bid, we know that there's some sort of fail-safe, because up until you start getting clicks and ideally start getting orders from those clicks, you're not going to know what the performance is of that.
True.
And so there is that aspect. So we will oftentimes use budgets as a spend control lever, because that allows us to get the sweet spot with the bids And then once we see that, then absolutely, that's part of the system, is to start uncapping and scaling budgets. I would say the only other scenario in which you might maintain capped budgets is in those scenarios. So like there are certain enterprise clients or there are certain brands where they're like, this is my spend, do not pass. And so like you have like a very restrictive, we have annualized the budget. So you got this much budget and you got to pace it throughout the year. And if you go over in January, you're going to have to pull back in December and that's going to hurt you. Those are very specific scenarios. There are brands like that. So we like to be careful. In those cases, again, that's more of a old school enterprise business play than it is like a quote best practice Amazon. But I do want to throw out that scenario.
Just as a feedback, what you do with setting the budgets based on your expected sales and conversion, we do that as well. That's, in my opinion, the best way to signal Amazon. This is the amount of impressions that I want, because if you can prove that you can convert them into sales at that rate that you forecasted, then Amazon will pick up on that and continue giving you impressions. So yeah, we do that too, and we set the original budget based on that, and that's how we at launch we say, okay, we have this much money a day to launch, so we're going to go for these campaigns at this projected conversion rate. This is the budget, and then we add up all of that. It ends up, the spend ends up always being lower, especially in the beginning. But that's how we set up budgets for every campaign. I think that's a very good practice. Yeah.
Awesome.
So you have an idea.
One more thought about budgets, guys, if I could chime in, because like I have this kind of idea in my head of like a budget as an inverted triangle, and then in reality, it's actually like a normal triangle with the base at the bottom. Because when you do budgets, I think a really kind of matured process for it is like, all right, how much are we going to spend this year? How much are we going to spend this quarter? How much are we going to spend this month? Taking into account things like seasonality. And then you can break that down per parent or by product, and then continue to plan that out. But what actually happens like on the ground, so to speak, is the spend is really dictated by the current environment and the competition and what you're bidding, right? So the actual implementation of the budget flows up from the bottom, whereas you're planning it from the top down. And it always reminds me of that Eisenhower quote that I'm sure I'm going to mangle, but it's basically like, the act of planning is useful, but plans are useless. So the concept being, of course, this is how much we said we were going to spend. Let's portion it all out. But what actually happens when you get on the battlefield is a different scenario.
100%. 100%. Another budgeting question. This is one that I think we all have gone through. We all have battle scars from. I don't know if there's a fantastic answer to the question, but maybe we could talk about approaching it. The question is, we have to cut back on our PPC budget for a bit. What is a wise way to seriously cut back? So that word seriously, again, I think we all have seen those scenarios and had the pit drop in our stomach and say, but how do you seriously cut back? Here's the trick without doing much damage to ranker sales. I'm going to preface this by saying a serious cutback on budgets will pretty much always cut back on total sales volume. You're going to have those weird instances. I would say the only scenario in which it might not is if there was significant like organic cannibalization in the account. But unless you have that significant cannibalization, I'm going to say, honestly, this is probably a game of setting expectations ahead of time, but I will open the floor. How does one do this?
I feel like the times where people ask this question and then I see it in practice, I'm often hearing it like after the fact, like after it's already been done. And they're like, oh yeah, in this month we cut budgets, up extensively. And it's often done with like a sledgehammer or, where they're just like doing it everywhere in equal ways. And I feel like the way to approach it is to do it very methodically and very surgically. So, I mean, Elizabeth, to your point, one section would be, where do I potentially have organic cannibalization? And I think it's a lot more rare than people think it is, but like that might be an opportunity to cut budget very safely. Non-converting spend, another super easy place to trim back ad spend, right? It's just like, where am I spending money that was maybe ambitious or, you know, a reach goal, not an actual achieved goal, you know, maybe you trim that out. I think leaving it on your most successful and most evergreen type keywords that are always been good to you, you should not cut budget. So that's just like some general thoughts that generally when I see people ask this question, they're just going to it with a sledgehammer, applying an equal saw to everywhere. But in actuality, definitely be more methodical.
I like it. I like it.
Can we safely assume, because Udlima starts with that we've had to cut back on our PPC budget for a bit. I'm guessing that ad account is not doing well, right? It's not bringing sales at 10% ACOS, right? Just an exaggeration. But so I'm guessing, otherwise, why would you have to? There are very few scenarios, right? Like my credit card is not working or something. Why would you have to, if you're making money out of those ads? So, and to Mike's point, I think if you need to use a sledgehammer on an account like this, you might be able to in your non-converting spend for sure. And I've seen cases where we've helped brands before that had like an 80% of their ads, even the converting ones, could really be paused without them losing any ranking, anything else, because what was giving the account that was maybe that other 20%. So my recommendation would be to really understand with your reports what's giving you or giving your products that ranking juice, which ads, which keywords, search terms, and then keep those in a bucket of things that I will look at tomorrow, and then start cutting down on all the rest. If you do that, then you might not see any degradation of ranking, because that's not what's providing it. That would be, if I had to like bonsai my way into something, a situation like this, I would create a conversion rate benchmark for my account, and everything that converts below that I would cut, and everything that converts above it, provided that it has sufficient amount of sales, I would keep. And then you shouldn't see that bloom, that the account plummeting or the rankings, you know, falling to the floor.
Yeah. No, I was 100. I think Michael touched on it. Gonza touched on it. I'll say it explicitly. Whenever you have to cut, especially drastically, you start with the things that have the least impact on sales. It's all about what has impact on sales. And that in the beginning, like they were saying, is wasted spend. Search terms, clicks with no orders, sales, click, even those things that you're like, you know, they're getting 1 to 2 clicks, right? You're being aggressive, you're being judicious with those things, and you're just like, you're moving backwards from that. Oftentimes, and the scariest thing that I've seen people do when you're taking a sledgehammer, going into the account, sorting the campaigns highest to lowest by spend, and saying that's where all my spend's coming from, and taking a sledgehammer to it. Most times, unless you have a really poorly run account, the things that have the highest amount of spend often also have the highest impact on orders, which is why when people only go after the things with highest spend and don't filter for that sales and order impact, you end up like bludgeoning things that are like really, really important to the account. I think we have time for, maybe we can squeak in another question. I know we're going to have to skip over some people, but I think this is one we can answer pretty quickly. It's on auto campaigns. Kim, who thanks Kim for showing up again. She's here quite often and always
Kim Kardashian.
Yes, always with the amazing questions and super nitty gritty ones. She's saying in auto campaigns, if only the substitutes perform well, do you pause the remaining targets? Do you prefer to just change to a low bid? And then 2, what do you think about the new Amazon business placements? We did cover the placements. Yeah. Again, like them, I'll just throw in here for any sort of placement percentages. My preferred method is it working? Do more of it. So if you can validate that it's working for you, which I think is what Brent touched on with, you know, looking in business reports and things, then use it. If it's underperforming, like probably don't use it. But as far as the auto campaigns, anyone got any thoughts on preferred methods?
You know, I did a study one time where we took auto campaigns and we basically broke them all out into single auto targeting campaigns, and it
Mhm.
did perform better.
Mhm.
Ultimately, you know, it's just like more granular, right? Like you can do specific things to that specific auto target that won't get
Mhm.
done to the other ones. So there was benefit to it. So yeah, I mean, to answer this question, yes, you can do that, and then you can decide
Mhm.
to run the other targets somewhere else.
Mm.
But again, it takes work to do that. It takes a little upkeep to sort of build and maintain it. Um, but I would say, yeah, that's something that I've done to good result.
Good. I love it. Anyone else want to chime in on this one?
Yeah, just one other thought, which is like if you think about a spectrum of match types and keywords and targets, right? You have auto on one end, which is like the most open, right? It's just like a free for all with Amazon these days. And then
Mm.
the other end, you have like exact with like fixed bids, right? Which is like as precise as you can get on Amazon these days, especially, you know, the changes they've made to exact match type, which we won't get into here, I think. But with auto, it's like you need to really be examining that constantly and making heavy use of negatives.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I know Mike's a
Yeah.
big fan of negatives. He gave a presentation about it this week, but you know, really, really being serious about checking that and using those, and then using something like engrams, which yet again, Mike is the master of the engrams. Would be a way to figure out, you know, how many words are in your search terms, and then determine, okay, should I just negate all things that have the word powder for my makeup, which is not a powder, but people
Mhm.
think it is. So we want to cancel that out and make sure people aren't, you know, spending our money. Or is there actually some search term that's 3 words long that has powder? Oh, we're actually getting conversions on that. So yeah, the more open your thing is, the more negatives you're going to have to set, and the more work is going to go into that.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. And I would say I'm a fan of, low bids too. Low bids
Mhm.
to cap.
Mhm.
We've coined the term, it sounds snazzy, like we call it like a soft pause. So it's kind of nice because to us it gives us the potential with you're basically pausing it without the definitive um completely cutting it off. There are those
Yeah.
things, don't get me wrong. We don't do soft pause for everything. Like we do definitely pause things in accounts. A lot of
Mhm.
times, like we were talking about taking, just a really scalpel to the account everywhere you possibly can. Oftentimes there are those outliers where it's like, yeah, we absolutely need to pause things. But if you're kind of like, should I turn this off? Should I not? Well, if you tried low bids and it still got clicks, then you're gonna end up with paused anyways. So I always like think through worst case scenario. If this still doesn't work, maybe I spend in a couple of 50 cents extra in clicks and still end up with the original result. So
Mm.
maybe that would work for you. And with that, I know there's still some questions in the chat, but again, we have an hour. We've been here for an entire hour. Time has flown by, especially flown by with good friends. So if I will let you guys, let's see, I'm gonna scroll in the chat. I'm trying to talk and QA this at the same time. But so if you have really enjoyed this conversation, I'm sure, like myself, I've learned some, like Brent gave me a tip on the business reports, and we talked about engrams, and Gonza had really good perspective on the reviews and like talking about DSP. So there are better heads than mine at ads. I still know what I'm doing, but I'm not the foremost expert. And so I'm glad to tap into other people who are. And so if you're interested in being a part of something like that, I highly recommend, again, you're going to have to apply. It is a high level group. But you can go to corecommunity.io and apply to join. There's 5 days of open enrollment. You got 5 days to do this. So, by the way, somebody reached out to me and were asking, like, hey, how's Core doing? I'm like, dude, I've seen what they're charging. They should charge more, honestly. But they're being super generous with their time as well as cost for this. Trust me, it's amazing. So if you all are on the fence, it's definitely recommend joining it. Gilbert saying, thank you, Elizabeth. And the community. Appreciate it. We appreciate you as well. So with that, any parting words?
Mike is good at that.
Never stop optimizing.
Yes.
I would say
Amen.
also come join us in Core. We have a orientation call the day after the open enrollment here closes, and all three of us are going to be on that. We really like to take the time to kind of get to know every new person. So you'll be put in that like class with your cohort of people that join in, and you get that badge in the form when you're in there, so people know, oh, you joined recently. Cool, like welcome them. So yeah, we try to keep it, like you said, Liz, pretty tight. Really good mix of people. We vet everyone to make sure the discussions are high quality and the calls are high quality, and people kind of keep things in the community is kind of the expectation that we have, and things are definitely moderated. So yeah, that's Core.
Yeah, no, I mean, if I can give a peek to behind the scenes, I know you all, like, every time that application comes in, you're like, hey, are they going to add value to the community? Is this going to be a great growth for our community? Like you said, 66 members, a lot of people in there, a lot of conversations happening. But I know as it grows, you guys are still focused on quality. And so you can have conversations like this. Like I know the goal of Core is like when somebody asks a question that there's like legit, like, answers to them that are not just like, oh yeah, I heard this theory once in a Facebook group 5 years ago, right? It's nope, this is what I'm doing now. This is what's working right now. We used to do this. I tested this. Here's what we ended up on. Like those are the kind of conversations happening. I know not everybody has access to that kind of network, but that's what Core is offering. So super excited for what you guys are doing with that. And with that, we appreciate all of you joining. If you're watching the replay, you still have time. So I would definitely recommend getting on this. And I will see you all same time, same place next week. Show up and get answers to your Amazon ad questions. Thanks, everybody. And that wraps up this episode of the Ask Junglr Amazon Advertising Podcast. I hope you found these insights and strategies helpful in your Amazon PPC journey. Remember, if you have a burning Amazon ad question that you'd like answers to, head over to junglr.com/live to join our next live Q&A session. Until next time, keep optimizing those ads and stay hungry.